Welcome in, everybody. It is a pleasure to have you on board tonight. This is Fantom Sports. This is Sports and Money. We are a lot of things. I have Robertson Vier with us tonight. I have Shortt with us tonight. We are talking about the AFC West in quite a bit of detail tonight. We're not going to name you every player and every backup, but we're going to talk about a lot of different things for the AFC West. It's the Way Too Early Prediction Show. Simon, Robertson, good to have you guys on board tonight, man.
Appreciate you having us, Ben. Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Ben. Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for not leaving me hanging there at all. We appreciate you guys watching tonight. Let's get started. The Chiefs last year go 12-5. And at the start of the season, everybody is just dumping on them because the defense looks horrible. The offense got off to a pretty good start in the first 3 or 4 games, but then by mid-season looked like a dumpster fire too. And so everybody's dumping on them. And then all of a sudden you get down to the end of the season and they're on fire. The defense has figured it out and the offense looks different, but they're still scoring a lot of points and moving the ball a lot. And then it doesn't happen. So they have another frustrating end to a season. And now we're kind of out of that Patrick Mahomes rookie contract window. And, the Chiefs have one Super Bowl win to show for it. So, Robertson, give me just a feel before we even talk about the next season. What do you think it feels like there for Kansas City fans as they look back over the past 4 seasons here? How do you think that the temperature is there in Kansas City?
If you look at the past 4 years as a whole, you have to be pleased. They got a Super Bowl. Not many teams could say that in the past 4 years. But this year specifically, I think they have to be a little nervous. I know they're not going to because they're drinking that Patrick Mahomes Kool-Aid, as you said earlier. But before we started, the division is just it's too much. I'm not saying they're going to finish last or even finish second. I think they're the favorites to win the division, but you had so much turnover on the offensive side of the ball, which we'll get to in a little bit. But they had so much turnover. You lost Tyrann Mathieu, which I think is going to be a bigger impact than what people are making it out to be. I think he was a vocal leader on and off the field. What he could do on the field is pretty obvious. So, they did sign Justin Reed, but you can't replace Honey Badger. I've loved Honey Badger, so I'm a little partial, but you just can't replace him just like that.
It's a good point. Justin Reed is a decent, solid starting safety, but he does not bring anywhere near the pass coverage skills that Tyrann Mathieu had. Reed is just as physical, but just as good in the box. But Tyrann Mathieu had the ability to cover, not shut down, but to cover anybody in the league and do a decent job of that, even from a safety spot. So I think there's going to be definitely a drop-off in that regard. So I'm going to want to ask you, what are the odds? Where would you place them? Chiefs win the Super Bowl versus Chiefs win the playoffs, or Chiefs miss the playoffs altogether this year. I'm certainly not suggesting a losing record, but just looking at the division and the conference, where would you place those odds at? Chiefs actually winning the Super Bowl versus Chiefs maybe even barely missing the playoffs this year.
I think if you had to make one negative odds versus plus odds, I would still favor them making the Super Bowl versus missing the playoffs. I don't see, obviously you lose, Tyreek Hill, Tyrann Mathieu, good players. But this team from a foundational standpoint, I think is just as good as they've been this whole time. And I think when something that kind of got lost in the shuffle last year when things weren't looking too good for Kansas City is everyone needs to keep in mind what happens to teams when they lose the Super Bowl, right? When teams lose the Super Bowl, they usually fall off one way or another in the following season. And the Chiefs version of that was going 12-5, winning the division and losing in the conference championship game. So I think with all of that said, this is the NFL's Golden State Warriors right now. They might not always win it, right? They might not be the truest form of the dynasty where it's the back-to-backs or the three-peats or anything like that. But this is a team that's always going to be in it until number 15 isn't there, I think. And we've seen, and we're going to talk here about how they've kind of retooled around them. Like you mentioned, going from rookie contract to now this extension deal, and Tyreek Hill to no Tyreek Hill, and just how they've kind of revamped this offense a little bit. I think is going to keep them right in it, and it's the Warriors version of Kevin Durant leaves, but you bring in Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole and Jonathan Kuminga, all that. Sorry, it's NBA playoffs. I'm really in the weeds here.
Simon, give us a playoff score, man.
Heat are I knew you were gonna Heat are up by 1, 99-98 over the Celtics with 3:27 left in the game. So that's a pretty good one. So
come on, Boston.
So playing pretty well.
Come on, Boston.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if you're listening to this, you watched the game the night before and you're enjoying it. So
yes,
good for everybody.
Simon, I'm going to come back to you and ask about the wide receiver room in a minute. But Robertson, Vegas agrees with Simon, but just barely. They had the Chiefs, or DraftKings has the Chiefs over/under win-loss at 10.5, with the Chargers at 10 and the Broncos at 10. So it's almost as if Vegas is giving a nod of respect here to Kansas City, but just barely. It seems like Vegas is really hedging their bets here because there are so many teams that are good. So Robertson, will ask you, that 10.5 over/under, if you had to pick, which side would you pick there for the Chiefs to fall on?
You have to pick the over. I mean, I don't think anyone's picking the under, right? I mean, unless you really believe in Russell Wilson, that he's just going to steamroll, that division and the conference. I mean, you have to believe that the Chiefs are still the favorites. Like, despite how you feel about Patrick Mahomes, he's still a top 5 quarterback. It's still Andy Reid. It's still that offense. He's going to find a way. Even though these pieces aren't Tyreek Hill, he's still going to find a way. Patrick Mahomes is still going to throw 35 touchdowns. I don't see a scenario where they win 10 games. Any less than 10 games or even 11 games, actually. I don't see that scenario happening. If it is, then Chiefs fans are going to be panicking.
Robertson, I've felt now for probably a year and a half, 2 years, that Patrick Mahomes, to me, looks a lot more like the Brett Favres of the world, kind of that gunslinger mentality, more so than he does, say, a Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, who just bring these incredible analytic skills to the game. But it's almost like no matter what you present him, at some point he's going to make a play, and at some point he's going to give his team a chance to win the game. Is that fair to say that he is more of that just incredible arm playmaker, gunslinger type of quarterback?
Absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, nothing about him oozes like, oh, he's a mechanic on the field. He's going to pick you apart, which he can do, but he relies much more on his talents and, his ability to just move in the pocket, manipulate the pocket, get out on the run and make a play. And, his receivers have been good enough in the past to beat the coverage and to get open. So, we'll see how he does this year without that crutch of Tyreek Hill, which I will call Tyreek Hill a crutch for him because, he just kind of looks back, oh, he's got to be down there somewhere. So, it'll be interesting, but I think Patrick Mahomes will be fine. I think the Chiefs will be fine.
Robertson, if you can segue like that, you're going to have an amazing sports career, man. You're going to blast me and Simon off the road because you just beautifully segued right back into Simon. Simon, the Chiefs have a whole receiver room full. I don't know. I'm sure I studied the Chiefs. I'm not sure I can tell you all the receivers right off the top of my head. They have quite a collection of receivers who can do everything. They've got some tool in the box who can do anything they want done, but they don't have anybody in the room who can do what Tyreek Hill can do, and that is be that true elite, unstoppable force. So tell me how you feel about that for the Chiefs specifically this season, Simon.
I think it's really good. I think it's going to push Mahomes, like you guys were just talking about, from going to that gunslinger, make the splash play, make the odd jaw-dropping kind of deal, and force him and kind of put him against the wall and say, can you do this? Can you drop back? And because it was so obvious last year that if they would just drop back, nickel and dime, hold the ball in the pocket for a bit, let Kelsey get open, let Hill run underneath, and do that every drive, they would go back to putting up 40 points a game. But they would do it for one drive and it would look great. And then they'd all get a little itchy and just want to chuck it deep after. So I think now knowing, hey, I don't have that guy anymore. And I'll talk a little bit about the specific players they do have, because they have a 70% Tyreek Hill, at least in the way he plays, in Marquez Valdes-Scantling. But they don't have that guy that can just take the top off whenever he wants. So I think it's going to force Mahomes to kind of change into that pocket passer, which I'm excited for. I think he can do it. I think he has the skills to do it. He just hasn't needed to, because he's always relied on that arm. He, played at Texas Tech, where he was able to just drop back and chuck it and play in a wide open kind of thing. But I'm excited to see what happens now. So yeah, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, that's your Z. That's your guy that's going to stretch the field and go deep. You have Sky Moore, who you just drafted, who's going to work the slot. He's a really smart, tough guy, can work the middle of the field, high school quarterback, so he knows what the quarterback's looking for. You have Juju Smith-Schuster, who for the last 2 years has been a big slot, also worked the middle of the field. But honestly, I think he can play a little bit of that X if you want him to. Make him that route runner, have him use his combination of size and fluidity and his hands, and see what he can bring you as a number one receiver potentially. But all three of those guys, if they're all B-minuses to Bs, right? If they're what Byron Pringle and Mecole Hardman and what those guys were supposed to be, and they actually do it as three just good players around Travis Kelce, around Patrick Mahomes, then I think this offense is going to be a different kind of prolific offense.
I agree with everything you just said, Simon. The only skew I'll add to it is I think that's going to show up more over the next 5 seasons for Kansas City. I think letting go of Tyreek Hill's significantly large cap number, getting all those draft picks back in, having a whole flock of wide receivers. Not all of them are going to be great, but having a whole toolbox full of weapons here for Mahomes to work with. It may not necessarily show up this year because of the way the AFC has stacked itself this year. But I think as those heavier cap numbers start to hit the rest of the AFC in 23 and 24 and 25, I think the Chiefs are going to be sitting in a beautiful spot here for the next 5 years. So I like what they did, and we'll see if it pans out this year. Let's move on quickly to the Raiders. 10-7 last year, surprised everybody. Surprised everyone. All kinds of controversy, all kinds of negativity, all kinds of obstacles, all kinds of challenges. It was an ugly season, and yet they come out 10-7. And I believe I've got this right. It was Cincinnati that they lost to in a pretty good game in the playoffs. Heck of a season.
Whistle.
So, I'm sorry.
Blown whistle.
Right.
Yes, it could have the game.
It could have been very different. We could be talking about the Raiders going much farther than it actually did. So, Robertson, let's hit you up first here. 10-7. If you're a Raiders fan, are you excited? Are you nervous? They got a new coach here. They didn't go with the interim guy. What do you think here about the Raiders?
You have to be excited. I mean, you had a Devontae Adams, who's a huge, he's a household name at receiver. He's, widely regarded as a top 3 receiver. He's reunited with his college quarterback. You have to be excited in that sense, but is it a little much? How much impact does one receiver have on a team? I don't know. I've never thought of Devontae Adams as a top 3 receiver personally. I know he's a great route runner. He's very shifty, but I think part of that has been also Aaron Rodgers to a point. Again, I'll eat my words if come, November, he's, leading the league in receptions and touchdowns and all that. But I just don't know how much impact one player is going to have on a team that's at the receiver position. I mean, they had an okay offseason other than Devontae Adams. I mean, it wasn't anything spectacular. So obviously you have to be excited, especially the way that things were ending last season for the Raiders on a high note, despite the playoff loss. But, I would be excited.
Robertson coming in with scorching hot takes here tonight, man. Devontae Adams, not a top 3. Man, I'm burning up over here, Robertson. But now, to be fair, Vegas tends to agree with you. DraftKings, the latest line I got on them, over under win-loss, 8.5 for the Raiders. They're really not giving the Raiders a lot of respect here. when a lot of fans and a lot of media tended to like what the Raiders did this offseason. So, Simon, if I give you the 8.5 number, we know it's a tough division, but man, Devontae Adams, Derek Carr, they got quite a few other pieces all over the team. Would you take the over on the 8.5, or you like the under, Simon?
I would take the over. I mean, this team went 10-7 last year. I know everybody else in the division got better. I know a lot of teams in the AFC got better, but I think the Raiders also got better. Now, eventually we start running out of wins, right? If we, keep calling the overs, which I feel like I'm doing. But I'm going to do it here because guess what? No one's going to check my math today as of
right.
May 27th. We'll talk about it again in August, but 8.5 is definitely low. I think at most this team regresses by 1 win, just because of how competitive everybody else got in the division and the conference. But this team was 10-7, got better. To me, that says they should at least be the same, if not a little bit better.
We'll let Vegas do all the math, man. We're just here to tell it like
whatever
it is, and like it is, everybody's going to be over. Okay, that's just how
I
it's
just go
going
off
to be,
of
man.
vibes. I just go off of
Right.
vibes. I don't go off of math.
Man, we don't care what Vegas thinks. Screw Vegas. All right. All right, we're not going to spend a lot of time on the Raiders because we could, but I think there's more interesting things with some of the other teams that I really want to get to, and one of those teams is the Chargers. Simon, I'm going to stick with you here. Chargers go 9-8 last year. I feel like the Chargers should have been a whole heck of a lot better than that. I feel like the Chargers should have been somewhere around 11 or 12 wins. They have one of the best quarterbacks in football. We could argue all night about where he fits on that lineup, but Justin Herbert is phenomenal. And they had a very good roster. They've improved it, but they had a good roster. We know they struggled against the run, but still 9-8, man. There were games earlier in the season that they probably should have won. There were games late in the season that they probably should have won. It just, man, checking in here at 9-8. How do you feel about the Chargers coming off of last year, Simon?
I feel good about the Chargers. So, yeah, those 8 losses, that's a little high for what the expectation was. 5 of those 8 losses were 1-possession games. And that's with a quarterback who was in his second year. That's with a new head coach. So not only was the head coach new to the job, but that second-year quarterback now had to learn another new offense for him. So I think what's going to happen now is they're going to really hit the ground running and look a lot better from the jump. And I think those games that came down to 1 possession, they're going to execute a little bit better and should turn it around by a wide margin. And that's because they greatly improved the offensive line by adding Zion Johnson out of Boston College, one of my favorite players in the draft. They obviously went and got some stars on defense and Khalil Mack and J.C. Jackson. So I really, really like what the Chargers did. I think we saw them get a little unlucky last year to have that many losses be 1 possession. And I know I just said I'm going to ignore the math, but math says that you're going to regress kind of towards the mean. So maybe now 3 of those 1-possession losses turn into wins, and they're a 12-win team, and that's a lot better than 9, obviously. So I think they're going to be fine. I, once again, have high expectations, and I think even more likely that they're going to meet those expectations this year.
Robertson, I'm going to get right to you here in a second. We're going to talk about the over/under. But Simon, you're stamping all over the ground here that I want to talk about, and that is Brandon Staley. You just talked about regression, and you talked about close games, and you talked about win-losses, and you talked about unlucky, and yet we have a coach in Brandon Staley who is very aggressive in terms of going for 2-point conversions, in terms of going for 4th downs, in terms of being very unorthodox here in terms of NFL play. So talk to me in this next season. What are we going to see from Brandon Staley? Do you think he keeps up that kind of it may not be, but it appears from a distance to be kind of a wild, very aggressive nature? Do you think he keeps that up? Do you think he tones it down? And is that good or bad for San Diego?
I think he turns it up. I think he turns it up because now his defense, in theory, is even better than it was last year. So for him as a defensive guy to say, oh, man, not only did I come here last year and install the defense that I wanted, and now I feel like I can push it on 4th down because I trust that defense. Now I've also had another offseason to add even more stars to this defense that I already put together. So you got to feel pretty confident to go for it, you know, let's say on the 50 or maybe even on your 45 and you're going for it and you're like, well, you know what, JC Jackson will cover me back there, so it'll be all right. I think he turns it up because I think that was when they were at their best. I think we actually saw the few times that he kind of moved away from his tendency to really go for it that actually backfired and hurt them a little bit more. So I think they're going to lean into it, you know, even more this year.
Robertson, I'm not going to move off of this. This is just too good of stuff. On one end, we've got Brandon Staley, who is, I mean, he's afraid of nothing. He's all over the map. He's very unorthodox. He's incredibly aggressive as an NFL standard head coach. And on the other end, the last broadcast, we just talked about Joe Judge, who is on the extreme other end, who is basically, I don't know, I don't want to call it giving up, but I don't know what else you'd call it. You know, he's I think, total opposite end of the spectrum. How do you like this Brandon Staley stuff, Robertson?
I love it. Personally, I love it. I mean, you know, being a Commanders fan, we got Riverboat Ron, you know, going for it. You know, it feels like every other time on fourth down. But I like Brandon Staley. I think, you know, he's going to be even more aggressive this year. I'm agreeing with Simon, but I think he's going to be a little bit more smarter about it. You know, that's not necessarily toning it down, but he's going to kind of be more selective, picking his spots more. Because he knows that he is in a very tough division. And so he needs to be aggressive, but at the same time, he's like, okay, I need to know when to just, you know, punt, believe in my defense. They did add Khalil Mack, and they did add J.C. Jackson. So I think it's something to be excited about for Brandon Staley that, you know, he feels like he can be more aggressive, but, you know, he needs to, at the same time, believe, you know, in his defense at the same time.
Robertson, I apologize for picking on you on the air. The volume's going up and down just a little bit. I'll come right back to you here in just a minute. But I am fascinated by what you guys are saying here with Brandon Staley. Both of you think he's not going to back down. He's actually going to be more aggressive this year. It's fascinating when you watch what the Rams are doing with Sean McVay and their method of drafting and team building. It's fascinating to watch some of these different styles that are starting to eke into the NFL. If we actually see Brandon Staley get more aggressive and not less aggressive than he was last year, I can't wait for him to basically just go for it on the 10-yard line, but his own 10-yard line, because, you know, it just seems to feel right at the time for him. Robertson, the 10 wins over under that DraftKings is presenting. So the Broncos are at 10 over under. The Chiefs are at 10.5. How do you feel about the Chargers at 10 here? Would you take the over?
It's tough. I know I keep saying that it's a lot, but the AFC is really tough. Especially this division. I mean, this is, at least on paper, the toughest division in football. So I would take the over. I think they're gonna. I said the Chiefs would go. I think 11 wins. I think the Chargers are gonna do the same. I think they're also gonna get 11 wins. I love Justin Herbert. I love that I think he's gonna take a huge leap forward this year. I think the sky's the limit for this team. So
I love it. Now let's get to the last team. Broncos were 7-10 last year, and they've added several pieces. I think none more notable, to say the least, than Russell Wilson. They gave up a lot. Russell Wilson's coming over from Seattle. Seattle's moving on toward the future. You know, Pete Carroll thinks the future is now. Maybe some other people around the country for Seattle think the future is next year or the year after. But be that as it may, Denver knows the future is now. They are all in. I don't know that, you know, several teams put all in this year. I don't know that any team went more all in than Denver did this offseason. Russell Wilson comes in. Simon, I'll start with you. At 7-10 for the Broncos last year, how good can they be this year?
I mean, they could be one of the best teams in the, you know, entire league, but I think the issue with that is it's all projection. This team, you know, last year at 7-10, which is a fine record, but this was a team that, you know, you watched them 2 years ago and into last year, and there was just, oh, they're just a franchise quarterback away. Look at these great young skill guys, yada, yada. But it's nothing that really ever stood out to me as like, oh, these guys just like need that quarterback to unlock them. I think the quarterback will make them look a lot better, obviously. I mean, Russell Wilson over Teddy Bridgewater and for sure, you know, Drew Lock is going to make those guys look good. Does he turn any of those guys into, you know, Pro Bowlers, All Pros, top 15 receivers. I don't know. Cortland Sutton, maybe Jerry Jeudy. You would like to think so. Hamler, I don't know, but you would like to think that. And sure, there's definitely a world where they become, maybe even win the division, but are in the playoffs and just as good as any team. But it's all very theoretical. It's not nearly as you can't see it as plainly as the Raiders, the Chiefs, or the Chargers, I don't think.
All right, Simon, we can talk a lot about this, but I want to go ahead and get the actual order finished for you here. Simon, go ahead and tell me who finishes first, and then tell me who finishes last in this division.
First, I'm going to go with the Chiefs. Last, I'm going to go with the Broncos.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, Simon's not a huge believer in the Broncos. Robertson, what about you? Who finishes first here? Who finishes last?
I'm going to say Chiefs finish first, and I think the Raiders finish last. I'm a big believer in Russell Wilson. I love Russell Wilson, so I think the Broncos are at least going to get the last wild card spot. So I believe in the Chiefs. I mean, sorry, the Broncos. Russell Wilson.
I don't think there's an uninteresting game in the AFC this year. I think at least for the first half of the year, I think every single game is going to be fascinating beyond belief. And probably half of the NFC games are the same way. It should be just absolutely electric. Robertson, let me stay with you here. If you had to make a number, how many playoff teams do we get out of the AFC West this year?
Given what we have also in the AFC North, I'll say 2, just because I think one of these teams, I don't know which, because I like all of them, really, I do. One of these teams is not going to perform the way that we expect them to. So I'm going to go with 2, and I think the other one would come out of the North. But it's hard to pick which one is not going to make it, just because I think they all have, they all have very good indicators of success. So I'll only go with 2. So it's a tough decision as to who won't make it, though.
Totally agree with that part of it. Vegas agrees with you. That's why they've got them in a cluster here, 10, 10.5, 8.5 for all 4 of these teams. Simon, I'll end it with you here. How many playoff teams do we get out of this division this year?
I think we get 3 from this one. I know that for what I just predicted a minute ago, that means Chiefs, Raiders, Chargers. But I think if you're talking odds, you're talking probabilities, I think all 4 of these teams are going to be in that playoff mix. And Robertson was right to mention the AFC North as well. But I think the AFC South is only going to have the 1. I think the AFC East is only going to have the 1. So I think we probably get 2 out of the North, and I think we can get 3 out of the West. And I do think it could be any 3. But Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders, I firmly believe could all be in the playoffs.
It's going to be fascinating. We are not far away. Everybody take your summer vacations and hurry back because it's going to start shortly after that. Okay. So thank you so much for watching. Simon Robertson, thank you for doing the work tonight. We've got tons more content coming. We're fixing to do another video right after this video. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Fantom Sports, both the website and the YouTube channel. You can find us on Sports and Money, both KC and Pro Football GM. We are all over the place. So if you like this kind of stuff, like it, subscribe it, suggest it to someone else. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. Have a great one. Goodbye.